Good morning, everyone. If you're catching me and this is your first time logging on to my channel, thank you so much. If you're a returning listener, I so much appreciate your support in moving this mental health work forward. So on my channel, I talk about everything trauma related, relational trauma, healing trauma, and I make it okay for you to not be okay on some days on this little corner on this internet streets. We try to make the conversations where if you can whip it in your mind, you can whip it everywhere else in your life. Today, oh my God, this topic, I've been sleepless over it for a long time, changing the title and re-editing, trying to figure out what title is appropriate so I don't get canceled. But it's so much needed conversation in every age, from young people, teenagers, young adults to geriatric. We need this. It's everyday integral part of our lives. We're talking about everything sex in marriage, outside marriage, in relationship, non-relationship, celibacy. We're talking about pornography. And we have an amazing lady I met at an event last year. She's super busy for her to make time for me today. Thank you so much, Rihanna. I'm going to move this over to you for you to introduce yourself. And I appreciate you making the time to show up for this conversation today. Thank you so, so much on a Friday.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. Definitely we have to make time and be intentional about making space for these conversations. So thank you for putting such a thing together, because it is definitely needed. I'm pretty sure we'll have a part 2, part 3, and part 4, because this is a hot topic.
In person, absolutely. Bring it on.
So my name is Reina De Leon, Dr. Reina De Leon. I am a psychotherapist, a licensed clinician as well here in Hartford. And I have my own private practice. And I don't know, what else can I say? And I do see a lot of clients for sex-related traumas. I do specialize in sexual abuse trauma. That's one of my specialties as a clinician. I do treat sex addiction, porn addiction. Yes, they are different. I do see clients that are non-monogamous, open relationship, which I'm one of the very few therapists that are doing that, at least here in Connecticut. It's very hard to find non-conforming, monogamous therapists around, and those are the areas that I specialized in.
Oh my goodness. Woo, this is gonna be spicy. Where do we start? I love it. It always the name, Doctor, and I apologize. I'm just like reading off your name, saying Rihanna. I think it's a common way to pronounce it, but I hear you saying it differently. So do you mind if I don't want to butcher your name by saying it wrong? Because I have a couple friends who are named Rena, so I just call you Rena. I'm so sorry.
Rena's fine. That's it.
Rena's fine? Okay.
Yeah, that is it. You got it.
Rena, I love it. Yeah. So we're going to start off. My first intriguing question is, listen, for someone like me who was married over a decade, okay, sometimes it gets like spider webs. Especially if you're someone listening and you've been married, you know how it gets. It gets boring sometimes. But then getting out of that, right? And I know, event, I remember you saying you've gotten through different phases of your own personal relationships too. I'm not going to put your business or whatever. I remember saying that. Yeah. But so going for that, like almost a decade and over for myself, and now rediscovering who I am in this new phase, my 40s, and then going on the streets, like whatever, it's tinted or it's peed on or it's dirty. I don't know, but I know it's all good. There are great people out there. But how do we consider, right, sex? We say you get in there, you want to maybe just have a dopamine hit. You want to just get that ink scratch rubbed a little bit. But how do we think revitalize sex, whether we are in the long term, not long term, and you just feeling like you just need to scratch it? Is that okay? Especially in our communities, religious communities, right? Christian, Muslim, Buddha, whatever, like whatever mindset religiously that you kind of follow. How do we, like, how do we go about that? I don't even know how to, like, you get what I'm saying? Like,
I
how do
do.
we doing it
Um,
without,
so I know that sex is always, I think it's ironic that sex is looked at as this big taboo subject, right? We all do it though. We're all procreated in that way, where this is the only way we're here, right? Is through the avenues of sex. So we know that we're all doing it. But it's that taboo, that idealistic, and that ideology, especially religious ideologies, that kind of put these other thoughts like, am I okay doing it? Am I right? Am I making the right choice? Am I moralistically right? Am I being out there in the streets, like you say, does that make me less than a woman, especially for us women, men throughout our cultures, especially I'm from the Caribbean, and our cultures is always like men are great to sleep with whoever they want and as many people as they want, even in these religious ideologies, right? It's almost like, but if the men do it, it's okay, God will forgive them, right? But if the women do it, you still a bitch, right? Like, no matter what ideology you're looking at this from, the woman is still a horrible
you
person. So
whole, right?
yeah, you're a hoe, but the
Yeah.
man is not. And it's ironic because I was just having this conversation the other day, but the men's penis is going inside a woman vagina. And it's a lot of vaginas that already have a penis. So it's socially constructed not okay. It's like, it's such a false dichotomy to think that it's okay for men to do it and not women. But anywho's, I think that addressing the taboo factor, for us women, especially if you're if you are in a marriage, how do you spice things back up? How do you, when life is happening, when you're tired, when the other person has an attitude and all of a sudden you weaponize sex. Well, I'm not going to give you no sex, right? And a lot of women do that. And, we know that a lot of women do that. I never did that. I'm like, I don't care how tired I am. You better come give me some sleep.
See, we're the few of the 2%.
Sleep. I've gotten the I'm tired. And I'm like, but what do you mean you're tired? You're
Right.
you're a man. But there are women that are like that, and not it's because we're tired, and then we got to take into account traumas. Religious trauma is something that we don't talk about enough. Cultural trauma is something that we don't talk about. As a Caribbean woman, for example, since you're a little girl, you are taught to be a wife. If you don't clean the house the right way, no man is going to want you. If you don't cook and clean, the man is not going to want you. So you find value in what a man can value you instead of, and then that comes with sex, right? So we're not giving sex the proper space that it deserves. And that's what I really think. I think that we have to keep sex separate from the other areas. And I think that will allow us to have and more conversations about sex and treat sex as the normal that it is, because it really is. It should have never been a taboo.
Exactly. It's I mean, truly, what have you seen, like, in conversation wise? Like, in my home, truly, I try to make it as light and, of course, age appropriate as possible, even for our teenagers, like, especially in this age of social media, the internet. Kids are hooked to their phones, jumping onto that little part of, the taboo. Religiously, we are told, close your legs, don't do it, you're gonna get pregnant. And then guess what? You get into a relationship, you get into a marriage, and you say your vows, and now it's like, okay, you are this good girl mode, and now the expectation from your partner is to be this wild person, right? So this leads to, sometimes even leading to things like cheating, right? So you're so naive, you're so green, you're told to keep it together, locked up. Then now you're in your 20s or whatever age, and now you're like, you got to be wild. How do you embrace that part, learn? Is it therapy? Have you seen that in your world of therapy? Like, I've been looking, and now I'm like, I need to book an appointment myself for a sex therapist. Like, how do we debunk the myth of the good girlness, the good hat, being nice? These kids, they might not be doing it, right? Might not be doing it as the natural way, but they could be doing it orally.
Mm-hmm.
Anally. They could be
Phone
doing
sex. That's
texting, right?
a common
Exactly.
thing now.
So
Um,
exactly.
I honestly believe, and I want to put my disclaimer out there. I am in a non-monogamous relationship myself, and my beliefs don't come from that point of view, because I've been with my husband for 24 years, and
Mhm.
only 12 of those years have been in an open relationship. So we did have that close relationship that you belong to me, I belong to you, we belong to us, and that is it, right? Like that controlling. And although we were never controlling and jealous or anything like that, but there were instances. But as we grew older, we started to realize, like when you mentioned cheating, what is cheating, right? Cheating is the idea of going behind someone's back and doing something that the other person doesn't like. And sex is attributed if you're a man, and emotional is attributed if you're a woman, right? Because if you're emotionally connected to a man, that's emotional cheating. And understanding those verses can be very difficult for whoever it is, based on their own belief systems and how they were socially constructed. So as a therapist, it's this idea that I say this to everyone: we are animals. We have wants, we have urges, we have instincts. We have learned through centuries to learn how to control our instincts based on religious views and other views that told you to behave a certain way. That doesn't change the animal inside of us.
I love it so
That
much.
does not change the animal. That doesn't change that when this guy walks in with some big ass biceps and a nice chest, we don't do this.
I know. I
I
never been
mean,
like
because, and then, or a woman walks in with some nice hips. It is evolutionary trait. It is an evolution trait for a man to look at those hips. This has been passed down for millions of years, genetically wise, right? Gene wise, this is genes. People don't think about the biology, but as doctors, we understand the fundamentals of where these things come from. So genetically, a man will look at them thighs. Can that woman bear my children? Can that woman hold the home? And can she sustain this? Is she? So that is a genetic trait that men have. So they are going to look at that ass. They just can't help it. They're gonna. And as a secure woman, a lot of us, we have to take accountability when we're very jealous and when we don't want our man looking to the left and we don't want the man is not the problem. You are.
the insecurities
The
we have.
insecurities that you have within you based on your own trauma, based on people who have hurt you, based on maybe sexual abuse trauma, based on things that you have gone through, you need to heal first before you go on into the world and say, I want to control the world, it needs to work around me. It's never going to work. You're always going to be unhappy. So that's how I feel about that. And I'm trying to give short answers.
I know. Because this is like it's such a broad, and definitely we're gonna have a part 2 and part 3, definitely, and I'm in person too.
And I would love to see if people have questions and that we can answer specific. This is taboo subjects. This is the stuff that people don't want to talk about, and they want to demoralize it as if it's bad, especially when it comes from women, right? Excuse me, if you're a man, women is who you are having sex with. If you are heterosexual.
Yeah.
So you would want that woman to be very well educated and very well versed in the sexual department if you want to enjoy that. So women want to talk about this. And this goes the same for lesbian relationships, for non-heterosexual relationships. The control factors, the insecurity, it all comes to control that people don't belong to us.
Yeah.
And that sense of belonging comes from attachment disorders. It comes from trauma and other things, the way that you were raised, whether or not you had a parent present, the way that you were loved or not loved. And those are the things that hurt relationships.
Oh my goodness. That is so good, Dr. Reina. Wow. Gems. It comes from our attachment, in our childhoods and what we're thought as children from our home. This is, for me, having been there and now being here, I'm so intentional to try to at least, and this is why I do my podcast, to teach myself. And as I teach myself, that I have moments that I get, I'm like, oh, this is so good. This is something I didn't know. Some of these things, know it 10 years ago. Maybe even my relationships might have come across differently. Things from oral sex in marriage. Growing up where I grew up, back where I grew up in Africa.
It was demonized. No oral sex. You
All
missed out
right.
on some good stuff.
Internet don't, like giving, oral sex to your partner or vice versa, things like that. Like, I feel like as part of the prepping for marriage, for long-term relationships, right? This really, really needs to be part. Like, what are our sexual languages before going into it? You can get somebody who's like really kind of like maybe like tied up or had sexual history of being abused, like myself, having people in my circle who were abused sexually and feeling afraid even to speak about sex.
Mhm.
People have their vows, and during their honeymoon, nothing happens, like
Mhm.
crickets, because that night now they're scared or they're afraid of pain, all this stuff. This needs to be like part of the churches or the religious, like before the vows are said during the, the hookup stage, to teach some of this, the languages, the attachment, the all of it, all the stuff that you mentioned.
Mhm.
Going on from that, like, so you've been, some of us been married a long time, yourself included, or your short-term relationship, it really doesn't matter. Once you exchange those bodily fluid, right? I, for me, doing this research leading to this discussion, there's something that came up, soul ties. I don't know if you ever touched that in your journey of like, therapy or therapizing or doing this work, right? And go into your doctoral studies and everything. What are your thoughts on soul ties and healing? Like, when my marriage ended, like literally for me, it felt like I had to go get over. Like, it was almost like I was on like drugs. Like, I'm just being honest and vulnerable.
Mhm.
Like you had to heal from, like, like an addict, and you
Mhm.
have to heal from this. And then come to find out, like, in the spiritual sense of making that analogy, the terminology or the verbiage is soul tie. So how do you heal from it, disconnect, so that you can get off that and get those connections, intimate more, especially for us women who are very emotional, tied to a person. Even if it was a year's relationship, if it was a 6 months relationship, imagine a decade and more.
Mhm.
It will take some level of work to slowly kind of, that's why people can, even though it could be toxic, it might not be good for each partner, they can find themselves going back continuously into that, toxic bond because of the addictive, the dopamine hit, the soul ties. Can
Mhm.
you bank soul ties a little bit? I don't want to get
Yeah.
on, but it's so big.
Yeah, I think that with being soul tied to a person, I like that analogy, soul tied. Um,
Mhm.
it's just like any other addiction. It's like any other conformity, because in marriage, especially marriage that lasts for 10 years, there's a difference between soul tie and conformity. A lot of us, we're conformed to the person, we're used to the person, we're used to our routines, we're used to, and we're creatures of habit. We need to know how we're doing it, when we're doing it, how everything's going to get done, whether it's the kids, just routines. And we get caught up in that. In that, we find comfort, and that
Mm,
conformity is what it for long-term relationships. For quick soul tie, 6 months relationship, maybe a 1 year relationship that you understand that it's toxic. What
mm,
we're looking for, it is that dopamine, right? It is knowing that
mm.
differentiation. But I want to talk about your breaking up after a long-term relationship. How do you heal?
How do
I
you
think that
heal?
I I think that, and in therapy, one of the things that I treat when I'm treating women that are going through a divorce, is one of the main
Mm,
things that I focus on is like, let's look at this as another chapter, right?
mm,
We're gonna put a bookmark on what that was, the marriage, because we can't focus on what it was. We have to
mm,
focus on the healing. What were things that you never took care of, even before going into that marriage,
mm,
that you have never done, that you always wanted to do? Or what are things that your fights were mostly looking like, and what about were they? And a lot of times are because of emotional attachments from our youth. A lot of times are from unresolved traumas that we never dealt with, and we were somehow trying to figure it out within the relationship, and that's why it was never going to work. So now that gives me a better platform to work out of like what we could work on. And this is solely about you, your healing process, your healing journey, and just embracing it as one chapter's over. Now I'm writing the next chapter. And what do you want your new chapter to say? Your new chapter shouldn't be bitter. It shouldn't be because all these horrible things that happened to me within that relationship. Because guess what? All of it is a stepping stone to be where you're at right now doing this podcast. You would have never been doing this podcast probably if had you not been gone through that divorce. And you don't know what you're going to do 10 years from now, which is probably going to be even more amazing. And it's embracing change in a way where let's move together slowly. For some people, it's slower than others. I have a client that's been 3 years since her divorce. And sometimes I feel like it was the first day she came in through the door. And I'm like, oh my God. And I have a client that is in her second year post-divorce. And she's doing amazing things because she took all my advice and she believed in me. And I love that she believed in me. And she calls me her favorite person in the whole wide world. But I tell them, you're the one doing the work. You're the one putting in the journey. You're the one trusting that you could do it. Digging deep inside. You know, we started at the one that's 2 years post her divorce. We started at a sexual abuse trauma that she never talked. She didn't even talk to me about it until 6 months we were in therapy. That's when I found out about it. And we started this holistic approach to burying this thing. So she went to I had her go to Puerto Rico where the abuse happened in a specific place that she always tends to remember and that has nightmares about, and do this ritual around that place and buried something and then watch the waves take it away. And then using this, you know, this way of coping with it and healing, and she doesn't even have the dreams anymore. It's even though it's symbolic, it was going through it. It's allowing yourself to be in that pain so that you can say goodbye to it, and healing that inner child and telling her it's going to be okay. We're good. We're adults now. We're going to have a better life now. So
it's all about the affirmations.
yes.
Real, and the ritual, the intentionality.
The intentionality, the validation that it comes from that. No one validated you. You validate you. This is how you learn to validate you. You don't need to seek that validation nowhere else. You could do it. You got this. And then that could be part of your healing process. And then it leads to great sex.
I know, exactly. A process. And sometimes it can be lifelong, because sometimes it takes for you to give that radical acceptance a chance and give the nest or however else it looks like, and not trying to chase looking for that same person, because sometimes that's what happens. So
the conformity.
They look for somebody else, but that other person start to look similar to whatever their other that other partner was, but in a different body. So it's this cycle that continues until you start to accept it and do the healing. Because, like you said, is you, me.
Yeah.
Have to do that inner child healing work. So it goes all the way to the root. I love that, though.
Accountability is so important. And I think that even with other therapists, I've had a therapist one time, just like, we'll blame the man, they'll blame everybody else, they'll blame the mothers because your mom was a bad mother. But I'm in my 40s. So hold me accountable. Help me help myself. Hold me accountable. How does that look like? Let's have a real conversation. Let's call our own BS out. You know, call yourself on your own bullshit, and then you'll be happy.
Like, Gina, you're full of crap. Like,
like call your, if you have like expectations that are unrealistic, and you want your perfect mate or your perfect soulmate, guess what? Your list of, of what you don't like, what you want, is what's keeping you from meeting that person, because the universe doesn't work like that. It's not going to align that way.
Yes. Oh my God, that is so good. So good, so enlightening. One question though around that, like partners, intimate partners, what's your take on while you're healing the soul ties, while you're doing the work? You want to scratch that each. Okay, could life be life thing? Let's say, hey, it's
Let's
talk STIs. Let's talk STDs. Do you recommend your client, your patients, we all as people doing this sexting thing, to require each of us to have a test to rule out STIs? ladies?
Yeah, I mean, it's important to be clean, right? No one wants to have, especially an STI or something that can lead to something life-threatening. That's something that I talk a lot about because a lot of promiscuity that comes from sexual abuse, a lot of people that have porn addiction and sex addiction are not protecting themselves. So you got the promiscuous, you got the sex addicts, you have the porn addicts, and then you have the serial cheaters that I tell them you are in an open relationship. It's just that your wife is not part of it. She's not having fun, but you are. And the serial cheaters that are not protecting themselves. And that comes from, oh, it's spontaneous or it just happened and da 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 da. But people are really not protecting themselves. I'm gonna say that people are not protecting themselves. They should. They should require tests, but sometimes in the heat of the moment, you go to a bar, you meet a person, one thing leads to another, you scratch the itch, you're not thinking about it, your mind is let go, maybe you had a couple of drinks. No one is going to say, can I see your last STI report?
This is where that work comes in, the being able to control yourself enough to take a pause. Like,
that's intentionality, a lot of intentionality. And that's something that is really not happening. And I'm not justifying it. I'm just saying the real of like what it's really happening out there. People are not thinking about it as much as they should.
Even in long-term relationship, like in some of my, therapies that I do here, and the therapy is not really my greatest area for my patients or clients, but every now and then when I do, besides talking about meds, I would say even in long-term relationships, if that instincts that we follow, it's okay to ask your partner and yourself to show each other during your physical exam with your primary care to sneak in some STI checks in there to make sure, it's all about that accountability you mentioned. Just like we'll have to talk about finances, just like we have to talk about individual goals and mutual goals in relationships.
Oh, they're not going to do that because they're going to be like, wait, you think I'm cheating, or why should we have to do that?
Exactly. But that's where what kind of partner am I with, and is that working for you? I always talk to my clients about like always doing that check-in every year, every quarter, even, or every 5 years, like how we lease cars. Like, do I want to renew this lease or this marriage? Like, really, marriage relationships should be like checked in where you're like, should we renew this after 5 years, or should we just like call it quit? Like, I feel like relationship will do so much better if you can do it like that. Okay, STI check every year, then every 5 years we are seeing, should we renew this lease or should we just like end the lease? And
that's a definite requirement for a lot of non-monogamous relationship and polyamorous relationships that I see. And they do, even more than that. A lot of times the insurance only covers like once a year, but sometimes you're paying out of pocket. And I know it's $275 for the quick basic chlamydia gonorrhea. Because I have a client that does it every 2 months. Every 2 months. But he's out there and he's married and he's like, I don't want to give anything to my wife. He's one of the very few people that is conscious and intentional about doing that. Actually, he's the only person that in all of my clients that have had these issues that even reported such. I have other clients who do it once a year that require it before they meet a new partner. But even if you did it on a yearly basis once a year, I mean, what happened the other 11 months? You can catch a STI in a day.
That's true.
So it's just one of those things that you just have to really trust who you're with and have those conversations. Like, do you want to have an open relationship? Because then the testing would be a requirement of that, right?
Exactly. They're being honest about where you are and
it is more natural and normal to have the idea of non-monogamy than it is monogamy. Monogamy is not natural, and I know that a lot of people are going to cancel me for saying that, but it is not the natural human way to be. We are like that because we want to respect the person, we want to love the person. We have religious doctrines that say you must. We have cultural views that say you must, and in the way that we were brought up, but we have to step outside of that little circle and think about the animal within us, right? So if we then our suffering would be so much lessened. It would be so much less. if we can start to see like, wow, my man is not looking at that girl because he's disrespecting me. He's looking at that girl because he can't help it. It's an evolutionary trait. Or my woman is looking at that guy's, butt because I don't know, it was there and I just looked at it. And it had nothing to do with disrespect. And then there's ways to do it, whether it's tasteful or not tasteful. But those are conversations that you can learn to have with your partners. But having restrictive relationships full of jealousy and insecurities do not work. You know what I always tell people, and I love this idea that I came up with? I say, if you do that, you end up with the man or woman you created, not the person you met.
Right.
Because if you create them that way, that means they know what not to tell you ever, what never to talk to you about ever. So are you really their best friend?
Yeah.
When there's a long list of things your husband can't talk to you about, when there's a long list of things your wife can't tell you about or will bring up, and you move on through life together for a long time, but each other's have things that you don't talk to each other about. And how happy is this relationship?
Oh, sure. I love that.
Eventually you're going to be trapped and it's not going to work, because you should be able to talk to this person. You should be able to say like, oh my God, I went to the gym today and this guy hit on me. And then I was like, I thought he was cute. Those are thoughts you have. You tell your girlfriend this. Why couldn't you go home and say that?
To your partner.
Because your man's going to be like, oh, did you want it up? It's like you end up with the man you created. So when you go to sleep at night, you speak about regular stuff, billing and kids.
Yes.
Your bills and your kids, generic. And then you go to bed. Food. You talk about food.
Right.
You're not talking about who is your man. Who are you?
Show on the TV, things like that.
What do you love? What do you? What did you do today, really? What kind of things you talked about today? What are your passions? We forget our own passions. We don't share our passions because they don't align with them. We stop being who we are. So you end up with the person you create versus the person you met.
I mean, I think this is a great segue, though, to talk about pornography, how this the space where it doesn't feel safe for each partner to talk to each other about some of this feelings, urges that might be happening. That's so natural. Like I watch my dog sometimes. I'm not saying weird dog, but we can be like, you're saying weird dog. I'm like, I see them. They just be humping each other, like, but
they don't smell the butt and they're gonna do the humping.
You have a dog that you can identify with that. I'm like, stop it, home, stop it, rascal, don't do that. But
we would be like that too if we weren't socially constructed to behave certain ways.
Cultural religion makes that have to be in that alignment, and then sometimes we start to revolt. It's like, no, I gotta leave. I gotta breathe. I gotta break free. This is like so constricting. These things, I feel like sometimes the church will keep people single and miserable in miserable marriages, especially for men. They go out, pornography, cheating, blah, blah, blah. Some people cover it well. Some people might not cover it well, and they get caught and
you gotta hide it from your spouse.
And then now you feel the need to check phones, all the stuff that happens within monogamous relationships that really cause a lot of pain, emotional pain. Now, can we talk about pornography too?
So pornography is a thing that I've been.
And ED. Let's not forget to throw in there some ED and
ED. Yes. So I'll mention about pornography versus cheating. So it's been the hot topic in the last year for me with clients. I've had clients tell me, oh, well, my husband is watching pornography, so therefore it's cheating. And I have had to debunk this, but in a way where I'm not putting in my values, but to let them see why it's not cheating, right? And then explore other avenues. And then for the men who are doing the pornography watching, what's happening with pornography is excessive masturbating. So that is leading to erectile dysfunction. And it is something that I have aligned very well as a therapist, where I actually know 3 or 4 urologists that I'm working closely with. I'll deal with the mental health factor. You deal with the medical factor, where the husband is not holding an erection for long, or he just won't get an erection. And now the wife is complaining. I see a couple right now that the wife is complaining that because of the excessive pornography, it just doesn't, get erect for her. And but she only provides sex once every 2 to 3 months because she feels that that's a lot. And so, those are type of things that I deal with as a therapist. When she said once every 3 months, I was like, don't you still get a period? Every period, every woman gets a cycle where you're like, that 2-day period where you just gotta have it. What do you do in those 2 days? Because I know what I'll be like, where is my husband? I don't know what she does, but she says once every 3 months. So, like talking about those two things and the reality of it.
Once every quarter.
Pornography has been so dangerous with the masturbation. And it's only a problem, and I just want to make sure that I say this. Pornography is only a problem if you are watching pornography during your work hours, during your kid's soccer game, during other areas of your life. When it's at least more than 2 times in one day, it's not normal. You do have a problem if it's like that, or you're thinking about it and you can't wait to get home to do it, and it's just taking away from your everyday. That's only when problems are a problem, right? I have clients who pull over to masturbate. I have had clients who take bathroom breaks to go masturbate. This is when it's a problem. And those are the things that lead to ED. And some of them think it's normal, right? If you between your 30s and 50s, that's who's masturbating the most. Although I have some younger clients that are doing it as well. But yeah, so it's a big, pornography is a subject all within itself. There's so much to talk about when it comes to porn.
Yeah, it is a topic as we get close to, our discussion today, segue into, pornography. What do you have you, for like our ending, whatever of this discussion, what do you see more, women versus men, like when, in regards to reaching out for help, and what are some of the discrepancies in relationships when it comes to like people actually looking or seeking help from someone like you?
So it's always the women, predominantly the women. However, I'm gonna say, however, for pornography addiction and masturbation addiction has been men. I actually treat at least 11 people right now for both, and that are men that reached out to me. One couple that I see, the woman reached out to me because her husband watches pornography and she thought it was cheating. So we're dealing with that when it comes to that, because she absolutely does not want him to. And
so usually it's safe to say they will get into trouble.
Yeah, because you get in trouble.
Right. Yeah.
And then, went through the phone, you were watching porn again. And those are the things that I say to women, like, you are with the man you created versus the man that you got, because why can't your husband watch porn? Why can't you watch porn? I mean, why can't, why do we put these rules and regulations on people? Like, he's not your son. Even with our own children, we need to have healthier conversations about pornography. But those are the things that people are not willing to talk about now. It takes a lot of growing and a lot of self-reflection to be able to step outside one's culture and one's religious beliefs to really embrace these conversations and have the guts to talk about it.
The people who like the kinks and who don't like the kinks and all this mishmash of it, but it's so vital to our doing life. Are you offering any classes? Are you taking new clients? Because I need to make an appointment.
Right now I'm full, but I did just hire 2 clinicians. So I have 2 people working under me. And as I wrap up my year with the doctoral program, which it's pretty much done now. I just graduated in May. Thank you. I graduate in May, but technically everything's done now. So we're just waiting. I go up and present my poster on the 29th of April. So it's all done. I am looking to do more workshops. I'm planning to do some workshops. So stay tuned, everyone. I want to do workshops about sexual abuse trauma and validation. I'm looking to do a workshop on pornography and whether or not it's cheating. And it's going to be a spicy picture videos going to be happening. Just talking about just sexuality, embracing sex and appreciating sex for the beautiful that it could be and for the good that it is, and not just the horrible taboo, let's hide, let's talk about it. And one thing I want to say that I just told my brother, who's a pastor at a Christian church, I said, you guys need a consultant I need to be your consultant. You know, one thing we got to stop telling people every 5 seconds is that they're going to hell and that they can't be having sex like this. And then maybe you'll have more members that will feel appreciated as a human being.
Embrace that human
The
beingness.
human beingness, yes.
This is why I do my channel, like to embrace the messy, the human beingness, the stuff in between. Like, listen, we gotta do a 2.0.
Yes.
Right after your graduation. I'm gonna have to get you back in there, in-person session or something like that. But my goodness,
definitely.
I love it so much. Don't make up the person, your partner in your mind. You need to face it and embrace the person who's right in front of you and be brave enough to have those conversations. And look out for Psych On Demand. Look out for Dr. Reina online. Are you on IG? Are you on Facebook?
I am. I have an Instagram. Is the name of my practice, which is Buscando Mi Destino. That LLC. That's my Instagram, and then Facebook is Reina De Leon LCSW. And yeah, I'm on TikTok too. I have a TikTok channel with my daughter. It's just Reina. Yeah, it's me and my Reina. It's called Mommy and Luna.
Oh, I love that.
My 5-year-old daughter. Yeah.
Oh, how old?
She's 5, my youngest.
Oh.
And my oldest is going to be 29. So.
Wow, you look like 29. Whatever you do.
I'm still having sex.
Oh, the same, right?
Yes.
You have to do it. See, people, if you can whip it in your mind, you can whip it in your sex life, and you can keep looking good and get the wrinkles staying away. Okay, yes. It's all from her being liberated. Yes. I love you so much. Looking forward to more. I appreciate you taking some time this morning to connect with me and connect with my people. And I'll see you soon, guys. Thank you so much for checking me out. And until next video, bye.
Bye.
Bye.